BlacKkKlansman is an American crime film directed by Spike Lee, a Spike Lee giant. Based on the 2014 memoir by Ron Stallworth, BlacKkKlansman, with themes of cultural clashes, racism, violence, police matters, and injustice, it tells the story of new police recruit Ron Stallworth and his journey as an undercover detective at the Colorado Springs Police Department. He finds himself infiltrating the local chapter of the KKK, Ku Klux Klan, a group with values of white supremacy, with a history and inclination to violence race-related. With the help of his colleague Kip Zimmerman, together Kip and Ron see into the lives of the various local Klan members, including Walter Breachway, the president of the local chapter, members Felix Kendrickson and his wife Connie, and later the Grand Wizard of the organization, David Duke. With a love interest in Patrice Dumas, Woody, who he meets on an undercover assignment, who is both a friend and follower of the national civil rights leader Kwame Ture, who is assigned. Who he also is assigned to investigate on the grounds of whether he's disturbing the peace or not, or inciting any violence. The story sees the difficulties Ron faces living life as a local police officer, while at the same time being a committed and accepted member of the local black community, as is related to his current relationship with Patrice. In analysing the character of Ron Stallworth, we see an ambitious young man who, when applying for a position at the local Colorado Springs Police Department, finds himself being interviewed for the job, having to decide what he might do if someone in the department called him a derogatory racial word, racial slur, and whether he could tolerate it or not. After Ron gets the job and begins working in the records department, he's faced with racial and derogatory slurs when asked to get records on black suspects, for instance. After speaking out to the chief, he finds himself with the opportunity to work as an undercover police officer, seeing what the local black community are up to, who with this example are out to sea visiting national civil rights leader Kwame Ture at the Black Student Union rally at Colorado College. There appears to be words of inciting violence against the wider community at the rally, but Ron's colleagues also agree that it doesn't appear to be anything anyone is genuinely going to follow up on. As the story continues, while Ron is sitting in the office with work areas to look into, he decides to call up the number of the KKK on his desk. Here he pretends to be a white man as he goes about trying to become a member of the KKK. Though he reveals his actual name, at the same time he gains an interview to join as a member after getting the all clear from the department. Seeing Ron is not white, he and his colleagues are able to agree and have Kip Zimmerman to go in his place and report back what he hears and sees. It goes from seemingly tense meetings to planned acts of violence, which both officers find themselves in, while trying to keep safe while doing their jobs protecting the wider community. With looking into the character of Ron's colleague and friend Kip Zimmerman, though he explains that he is Jewish, he also reveals that he has spent so much time in the wider community that he basically forgot that he is Jewish. So that in a way, with this role and task of deceiving the KKK members in the room at a given time, it wasn't such a change from what his life usually is like. As the story progresses, Kip finds himself confronting Ron, saying that he's on some personal crusade, when he, on the other hand, is treating this as a job, which he's trying not to make more complicated or dangerous than what it already is. Although he can relate to how Ron feels to some extent regarding it as a personal and cultural confrontation. Kip, who at one point seemingly displays his Star of David necklace to his colleagues, is seen as showing some sense of cultural connection and pride also. Throughout Kip's encounters with the KKK, in their various hangouts and meetings, he's often faced with the accusation of being Jewish or secretly Jewish, or a derogative or racial term for being Jewish, even to the point that his life is threatened, though he gets out alive. At times, he relates to how he feels the complications of being culturally implicated to the death of Jesus Christ and how this makes him feel in his day-to-day life, where he also just finds himself as naturally being another individual in the wider community. In analysing the character of David Duke, the Grand Wizard of the organization, the KKK, where he resides in Louisiana, we find someone who speaks proudly of the accomplishments the organization has made, as he continues his conversations over the phone with Ron. With the words of seemingly Christian ritual ways of David Duke, it's also contrasted with the example of the race-related story narrated by Harry Belafonte, the actor, of the disabled boy who was used as some form of barbaric demonstration for white power movement years earlier, when he was violently tortured and put to death on the street in front of various onlookers after being accused of a crime against a white woman, an aggressive crime. This violent race-related story contrasted with the words and ways of David Duke, with how he seemingly has been attempting and wanting to take the organization in a new direction, based on being less crazy, violent, and unpredictable, and more organized and political, to take control of the White House again, for example. We see how times have seemingly changed or progressed in some way with this organization and the wider community. Later in the story, Ron finds himself being David Duke's bodyguard at the induction event for Kip, even though it appears that black people aren't supposed to be around in this group, given the history of the KKK organization. However, there's a feeling or representation that David Duke is wanting to show some level of tolerance in this instance, with Ron by his side, though David suddenly loses his temper and threatens Ron after Ron gets a photo with David and another member together and hugs him in a somewhat aggressive manner as the camera flashes. In the various conversations over the phone Ron and David have together, we get the sense that there is some sort of funness David Duke has for Ron as he's entering the organization enthusiastically. And this concludes with the example of a character that Ron is relating David to, of a young black kid who lived around the block and loved butter biscuits, so much so that his nickname became Butter Biscuits afterwards. And although with another example of continuing from a previous conversation they had together on how David could tell whether or not he was talking to a white or black man, simply by the way one spoke on various words, there's an ongoing laughter amongst Ron and his colleagues by the way Ron's been able to get away with this secret for so long. After Ron reveals to David over the phone that he is indeed a black man and not the white friend he was led to believe he is, David Duke is left shocked and humiliated, even seemingly hurt by what appeared to be an injustice done against him when he felt much connection and had even gone out of his way to personally call and welcome him as a member of the organization. With the example of the beginning of the film, with the Ku Klux Klan reader stumbling over his lines while trying to promote the organization, we get the sense that this is just his job also, and that he may or may not have any connection to the material at all and is just employed because of his good or sound vocal skills and presentation. And though fighting against racism, bigotry, and aggression seems hopeless, Ron and his new girlfriend Patrice get to see some justice at the end too. This occurs when they get the crooked cop to confess he was the one who pulled over and harassed Kwame Ture and the group after the rally, and even groping Patrice as well. But with the help of and witnessing of the other police officers and even Chief Bridges, there's some form of justice and gratification when it appeared that racism couldn't at all be solved by working on the inside, or the police department, with this example. In the BlacKkKlansman, we see into a world where people of common interests have taken the steps to be closer together in one unified movement, whether based on race or taking some form of action such as violence or being more organized. We also see what happens when particular individuals aiming to move on from the violent and bigoted past make the new decisions to take race-related matters in a new direction to either connect, investigate, destroy, or disrupt these often destructive patterns. I invite you to comment whether you agree or not, or if you have any different takes on this film or its various elements. Thanks for watching.